mostly not everyone has, and that is to somehow or other find something somewhere that, though I cannot see it and I do not know it, and experience proves that so, nevertheless draws me to it. And I'm drawn to it because, well, in truth, I don't know why I'm drawn to it. For a long time, you'll believe that you know why you're drawn even to the truth. You'll give yourself all kinds of reasons for it. But the fact is that it is something that draws us to it. It is something that carries us. It is something that does for us what we cannot do for ourselves. I'm talking about God, truth. Because in one way or another, there's a part of us that understands how absolutely futile, painful, and every other word that one can imagine along those same lines it is to spend every single day, as you do, paddling, fighting the current, trying to figure out how to do what you need to do so that you can get everything under control, so that you can finally be at peace and relax in some way. And I'm a little bit reticent, increasingly so I might add, to tell you certain things that indicate a possibility, because what happens, as sure as I'm sitting here, is that it's the mind, the way it works, it'll seize onto an idea, an image, and then having seized upon the image and then filling in all of the cracks and spaces in it, begins to believe that it actually understands and possesses the thing that it's imagined. First, by definition, you cannot possess anything that you've imagined. By definition, to imagine something is to be separate from what you're thinking about. But I tell you, there is a life that awaits the man or woman who will be honest to their intention to find liberation, and who will not be put off and deceived by all the little ways in which thoughts and feelings come along, little eddies along the way, and try to steal you into that little pocket of water where you think you found something. You are meant to be a human being who floats down the stream of consciousness, who floats without effort, knowing exactly that you are in the right place, doing the right thing as you are moved by that current that you have agreed to live in. The only current that you want to live in the way you are now is one that brings you the contentment you've imagined, that promises it will take you someplace one day that will be the pleasure of your life and you won't have any more problems. That current is not a current. It's a dry bed stream that you believe has water in it, and it doesn't at all. And I just want to set the stage here so that we can understand certain things that, by God, I tell you, nobody wants to. Imagine a man, his brother has gone west back in the day. Gold rush, gold fever. And he gets a letter from his brother saying, I found a mine. It's called the Promised Mine. You just won't believe it, but I don't have enough money. I need a little more money. Can you send me some money? And his brother says, well, I'm kind of tired of living out here in the east cities. I'm going to come out there and explore it with you. I can't wait to see it. Fast forward, but in those days, 3 months later, on a wagon train or whatever it was that took to get there, he rolls into this dusty little western town somewhere in California before it got ruined. And he says, let's see it. And they go out and they go out to this mine someplace out a ways. And they're just walking through it. And there's like a gold nugget here and a gold nugget stuck in the wall there. And his brother goes, look, I told you, man. It's mine. He says, well, how do you know he said, I've come out here 5 days in a row waiting for you. And every time I've come out, I've found gold. Every time. Brother says, that's like, the old expression, brother, if something's too good to be, I don't know, what's the old expression? If something is too good to be true, it usually is. He says, but I don't want to be a naysayer. He said, give me a little time to do some investigating, and then if it's still as good as I think it is and you think it is, we'll do it. That's great. Yeah, mine. 10 days later, he goes to his brother. He says, I want you to go tell the guy that is selling you this mine that you're going to take your brother out there tomorrow, because he's going to be the last word on whether we buy this mine or not, and he just wants to see it. Brother says, well, why do I have to tell him? Just do me a favor. All right. So he goes and he tells the guy that he's negotiating to buy the mine with. And that night, I would say around midnight, the two brothers are camped out on the other side of a hill overlooking the entrance to the mine. And a horse clip-clops up, and the guy that owns the mine gets off his horse with a little bag, and they can see him, even in the distant dark light, planting gold nuggets in the dirt and into the wall. When he clip-clops away, what do you think the brother who wanted to buy the mine, what do you think he's feeling about his brother? Is he going, thank God, brother, you came and showed me that? He's torn because on one hand he realizes he had almost invested himself in something that was not just useless but would have stolen their family savings. But on the other hand, he was so invested in the idea of becoming rich and famous, gold tycoon, that his heart was broken and his spirit was filled with discouragement. And at one point he turns to his brother and says, I don't understand. Why would you take me there and show me that? And his brother says, are you kidding? I showed you what I showed you so that you didn't make the mistake of a lifetime. And his brother, even though he understood that, has trouble understanding that. How many of you can understand that? That's exactly what the truth is like. Exactly what the truth is like. It wants to show you where it is that you are investing yourself in something that has been salted, that has been pumped full of all kinds of promises, that you don't know something goes before you to make sure that what you're looking at and feeling is generated by something that's interested in you investing your life in it, and that you will get nothing out of it. How many times do you as a human being have to have that experience, that shock of coming to absolute nothingness? How many times has it happened already? Can you count them even? You can't. And yet, mine. I still, the intention for liberation and the exploration required evaporates the moment that you say this or they promised that or something's on the horizon that looks like it might be a new kind of happiness for me, and boom, I'm gone. I have no intention anymore other than to do what? Make that mine. Yes or no, please? So here I am. On one hand, I know you do. You wouldn't be here. The people in the room, you wouldn't. If I didn't want to know the truth, I wouldn't be here. And yet, on the other hand, it's shown to me over and over and over again, and over again, I seem to fall asleep into a deep kind of sleep that I don't even know I've fallen into. Which is why all work since the beginning of men and women ever having any possibility of perfecting their relationship with the divine, it is always spoken of one thing, and that one thing was first that a man or a woman must awaken. That's why the idea of awakening is paramount, because built into it is an understanding by those who have left the possibility of such discoveries. Built into it is the realization humanity's asleep, sound asleep. See, you don't actually think you're asleep, but you are. And the point of talks of this class, of this school, is to help you see for a fact you're asleep. Because if I'm asleep and I'm busy getting ready to buy into what I'm buying into, and then I find out once again, 1,000 years later, I've bought into nothing, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. One day you won't have any hesitation to understand there is something in you that despises the truth, despises it, because it's working to bring you out of a slumber so that you can start to go through what's inevitable. If I wake up to what I've done in my sleep, then everything that's been done in my sleep has to be realized as useless, doesn't it? So the idea of awakening comes because I'm asleep, but awakening to what? The part of me that buys fool's gold, that invests itself in something that has no intrinsic value other than what I imagine it will make of me if I ever get my hands on enough of it. Everybody following this idea? So why is it, as if I'm not explaining it, these repeated fears, these worries, the title of the talk was what? Freedom from the unseen source of fear, stress, and sorrow. Why is it as many times as I've found myself frightened, anxious, worried, nervous, angry, why is it as many times as that happens, and then, by the way, my intention comes to life, doesn't it? I want to be free. And no more does the idea of realizing that I'm trapped somehow occur to me than the idea of I want to be free, and something shows up in my head selling me a mind that's been salted. You understand the idea of a salted mind, yeah? So I want to look at something William Blake wrote, but I'm going to do it relatively quickly. You know the saying, I've spoken of it before, but each time I revisit, or I should say each time certain ideas are re-illuminated, one sees things ever more clearly. You know the expression, the fox blames the what? The fox blames the trap. You know that, right? And you can kind of intuit that in a way. Did you know that every saying like that, every koan, every parable of that nature, do you know the one purpose of that? It is to get you it is to stir in you a question, because you can feel the truth of it. The fox blames the trap. Now, why should the trap's responsible for the fox getting it stuck in it, isn't it? No, it's not at all. What it's alluding to here is that the real nature of the trap is not the thing that catches the fox. The real nature of the trap is the nature of the fox. That's the real trap. Because it doesn't know what it is. It doesn't know what it's doing. All it knows, what is the only thing the fox knows? What it wants. That's all the fox knows. You go, ooh, what's that? Chicken? No, that may be curry. Look, it's in that box. I'm kind of suspicious of that box. Yeah, but, oh man, chicken. I'm hungry. Was it bacon? Bacon. And into the trap it goes. And did it go into the trap that traps it, or did it get trapped by its own nature that takes it unwary into anything that promises to satisfy what it wants to make its own? Yes or no? You and I have to understand that there is this invisible trap, and it isn't outside of us. The trap is this nature that, because of its level, because of what it understands, or more accurately, what it doesn't understand, the trap is a nature that can be endlessly tempted into finding something to identify with. And then when it steps into whatever it is, in the pursuit of what it believes will make it whole and happy, the trap springs shut. And then the human being blames the person for deceiving them, blames the circumstance for the conflict they're in. When the only reason the person is in a place where, instead of floating down the river and understanding that the whole thing has been made for them, instead of being in a life like that, now they're struggling to get free again. And one of the most extraordinary things, and I don't have time to go into it totally at all, actually. Have you found out yet that there is a part of you that actually believes, I got out of that trap? I got out of that problem. Yes or no? So I actually believe that even though I fell in the trap, which I didn't know was because of my nature, that it produced both the temptation, the identification, and then the closing of possibilities, I think to myself, well, I got out of that one, I can get out of the next one. That's the way the mind thinks. It never thinks to itself, how many times am I going to do that? How many lifetimes am I going to spend blaming the trap? Blaming him, blaming her, blaming this, blaming that. How many lifetimes am I going to do that? Because until a person actually asks a question like that, there's no way that they'll ever start suspecting, as most of us have no clue at all, that whatever the condition is that comes along and closes shut on me, and there I am, I'm afraid, I'm angry, I'm anxious again, that whatever that condition is, it did not come to me. I entered into an unconscious relationship in my own consciousness with a mind that had promised me by hook or crook that if I answered the fear or I went after the freedom, then I would achieve what I was after and I'd be whole again. 1,000 million times that happens. Until a person starts to grab hold of a certain kind of idea that the truth has been passing out freely for forever. How many of you know that? I've told it myself, but it goes here and I'll go through it quickly. There's an old story, spiritual story. It's actually all koans, all spiritual stories are seeing stories. Let's be quite clear. They are there for you to see something, not to think about something. There's this teacher, and he's got 2 or 3 disciples, and they're walking through some elevated country, mountainous country, snow there. And the teacher, for whatever reason, isn't wearing a coat, and the students can see that he's cold, and they don't want their teacher to be cold, and each one wants to prove that he loves the teacher more than the other. And they're walking along a river, and all of a sudden, one of the students sees this, looks like a fur coat going right down the middle of the river. And the students go, look, master, look, there's a coat. I'm going to go get it for you. No, you're not going in the water to get that for me. But you're cold, I understand. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, I don't want you going in, I'll go in. And the teacher jumps into the water to get the coat. Fast forward 3 minutes later, he swam out, and now the teacher is floating down the river with the coat towards the waterfall. The students are going, Master, let go of the coat. You're going to go over the falls with it. You're going to drown. And the teacher goes, I would let go of it, but it won't let go of me. It's a bear. What do you think that story means? What's the heart of a story like that? What we think we possess possesses us, period. Now, one of the problems is, and it is a problem, but not an insurmountable one, is that we don't know. That the problem isn't that that something is clinging to us, as in the story, but that there's something in us that clings to everything and doesn't know it's clinging to everything. We don't have a clue, because our resolution when something is wrong, when there's a problem, is that I didn't plan that, I didn't want that, that wasn't how it was supposed to go, and so our explanations and excuses cover up all the fact of what we don't want to see, and that is that we do not possess what we believe we do, rather anything we believe in possesses us. We do not possess what we believe we do, rather whatever we believe in possesses us. And we don't understand that at all, not even a little bit yet. But you will, that's why we have these talks. Now, I want to show this to you, another story. Do you remember, I think it was last week when Christine, our long-seeking spiritual aspirant, went to see the good doctor. Do you remember that? And when she went to see the good doctor, do any of you remember what the doctor told her the problem was? It was called, anybody? Become I. And Become I, it's an acronym for those of you that don't know, BCOMI, bad case of mistaken identification. And that's what she was suffering from. Do you remember that? So she's back to see the doctor, like 1 week later. One of the fastest return trips ever in the history of Christine. And she goes in. She says, but you're here rather quickly this time. She said, you wouldn't believe the week I've had. Well, what do you mean? I'm not even sure, she said, but I have a suspicion, and I think it's because of what we talked about. You know, what you called me, I had become I syndrome, the bad case of mistaken identification, and how everything that was troubling in my life was because of what I was identified with. And because I was identified, I had no freedom at all. Yeah, I remember. She says, well, can I tell you what happened? Okay, sure, of course, I want to know. I said, well, first of all, she said, and I'm a little embarrassed over all of this. She said, but I need an answer. She said, you know, I have a BFF. You know what a BFF is? It's not a burger with fries. Best friend forever, is that what that stands for? I've got a BFF. And, you know, we've been tighter than that forever. He said, I know you've mentioned her before. Well, he said, a new gal has come to work in the same company we do, and she's been going out to have a glass of wine with us. And I don't know what to tell you, but I think my new BFF is making my new friend a BFF of hers. I mean, I can't believe it. She hardly lights up when I talk to her, but every time she sits down and talks with this other gal, she's all excited and telling me about all the things she's doing with her. He said, what are you saying? She said, what I'm saying is that I'm angry. I'm jealous. He said, all right, what else? At work, you know, I've told you over the time that there's these possibilities, promotions. Well, we're up for another promotion in my work group. And we have these meetings where the supervisors from the tier above us analyze, and we discuss problems and solutions. We have an imagination time. And there's this one guy in our group, and I tell you what, he just makes me sick to my stomach. Why? Because he's always fawning in front of the boss. He's currying favor. He said, well, what's wrong with that? What do you mean, what's wrong with that? You can't, she starts to get angry. You can't see what's wrong with that? He's doing that so he'll get chosen for the promotion over me. I've been there long. I have seniority. He says, well, what's the point? She said, what's the point? I couldn't resent another. I think about him at night when I'm lying in my bed. I see his stupid grin and I hear that laugh. Are you following? I'm not out of my mind, am I? You know what I'm talking about. He says, all right, so you're, all right, I get it. You're full of resentment and you have jealousy. One more? He said, yeah. Today, on my way here, I stopped to pick up some Alka-Seltzer because my stomach's been so upset. Hey, I'm telling the story. And when I went to check out, I pulled out my new highfalutin, super duper new, only one people in a million gets this credit card. And I presented it to the woman, the cashier, thinking to myself, this is going to impress her. And she looked at me, she said, we don't take those kind of cards. And she was sneering at me. Yeah, exactly. Well, and are you kidding me? Do you know how hard I work to get that? I'm paying $800 a month to own that credit card so that people will think to me how special I am. And what a fool you are if you have a credit card that you're paying money for. Sorry, I know that some of you do. Don't care. He says, what's the problem? What's the problem? I'm still fuming. I drove here fuming. He said, you're still fuming, aren't you? She said, yes, I am. What am I going to do? She said, I feel like it's connected to become I. I feel like it's somehow connected to this business we talked about where I'm identified with things, but I don't know what I'm identified with, but I have a feeling it's all connected. Am I right? And he said, you know what, Christine, we don't even need to have a diagnosis. I already know what's going on. Well, am I right? He said, you're right. He said, let me ask you a question, because it is a kind of syndrome. Do you know anything, he asked Christine, about King Midas's golden touch? How many of you know something about King Midas's golden touch? Those of you who don't, it's actually an old Greek myth, goes way back. King Midas was a Phrygian, Phyrigin, a Phrygian, belonged to that kingdom. And it's rumored that he long story, that he rescued or helped a satyr, a certain demiurge, a kind of little god that belonged to Dionysus, the happy god. Wine and lustful things. And Dionysus, out of great gratitude for Midas rescuing this creature of his, said, make a wish, I'll give you any wish you want. And so King Midas said, really? Yes. Oof. What would be something that I know exactly, he said. Whatever I touch, I want it to turn into gold. I want a golden touch. Whew. It's done. Oh, my God, was Midas happy for like 4 hours. He went around touching everything, touching bowls, touching trees, touching stones. It was crazy because he had found all that he'd ever been wanting. Do you understand how that could be? Yeah. And then it was time for him to eat. And he reached over to get a grape, and what do you think happened to the grape? Then he reached over for a bowl of soup. What do you think happened? Chicken soup. He wanted a glass of water. What happened? Now, the story goes further than that, but I read at some point that it's not really the original story, that he actually accidentally touched his own daughter when she was bringing him something and turned her to gold, killed his daughter. At which point he went through the repenting that one does, and he went to Dionysus and said, please, please, please. And Dionysus said, go to the head of this river and bathe yourself there, and it'll be removed. And so it was. So remember now, he's talking to Christine about this, right? She says, well, I understand that, but what has it got to do with me? He said, well, the truth is, he said, everybody in this world has this kind of a curse. What do you mean? He said, well, it's not really called the Midas curse. It's called the that's mine curse. TMS, that's mine syndrome. Where whatever it is that we look at, whatever it is that we look at, want, touch in any way whatsoever, the split second that we look at it, if it's something we want, we are instantaneously identified with the image, and the minute that we're identified with the image, along comes the identity that believes somehow or other that what it has imagined and must have is now its own. And so it turns everything into something that it says without knowing it does, that's mine. That's mine. Now, in case you're not following, we're going to make a long list here in a moment. But to be clear, just so you know, please, you tell me, what is the conflict that you have with anyone or any circumstance in your life? What is the conflict that you have with anyone or anything in your life? Every unwanted moment. Can you tell me, given what I've said? Get your hands off of what is mine. This security is mine. Don't mess with it, world. This image I have of myself, that's mine. Don't you dare bring something up that's going to make me see something I don't want to see. That's mine. Now do you understand the that's mine syndrome? Like the Midas touch, where everything he touched turned into gold and basically was going to kill him, and where everything that this mind touches in its unconscious state turns it into something that it believes belongs to that consciousness, and in that coveting of that thing, fears and resists anyone and anything that challenges the assumption that that's mine. Do you see it with me? So now we're going to build a list for ourselves. And when I was working through the idea of how I was going to present these ideas to you, to make them as palatable as I knew how to do it, without compromising the purpose of the talk, I thought to myself, well, how can I show something that not only are we unable to see as a rule because of our level of consciousness, but that our level of consciousness actually doesn't want to see it? How can I introduce an impression into the human mind that would allow the impression to get through? And so what I came up with is I want to, and let's bring our list up on the board, please. It says, name something, any character, quality, or condition that you believe belongs to you, and that, to whatever extent you feel is true, you're inclined to think of as being mine. Or said in other words, what are some of the things that we don't know we're identified with and call mine until someone or something challenges that conviction? Do you understand? What are some of the qualities, characters, or conditions that you believe belongs to you, and that to whatever extent you feel is true, you're inclined to think of as being mine? I'll set the stage for you. How about, just to start with, my possessions are mine. I own my house. I own an account. May not have in it, but by God, I own an account. That's mine. Isn't that something I think is mine? And when am I most afraid? When am I most anxious? Other than moments when whatever it is that I have said is mine suddenly looks like it may not be mine altogether, or something's threatening my relationship with it. Do you understand? So I believe it's mine. In other words, one way or another, I believe that what I'm identified with that gives me a sense of security, I believe that that security is mine. Do you not? And again, I ask while I get ready to finish, and what happens to that sense of security? What happens to it? All has to happen is one thing has to go against whatever it is that you think maintains your security, and then in that moment, are you a happy person or a miserable person? How about this for an unseen thing that I think is mine? My position in life. That's mine. You don't think to yourself that you think that's mine, but what happens when anybody comes along and challenges what you say your position is in life? I'm asking, what happens? So I think that this position, my social prominence, my authority, how about this? I think my appearance is mine. Yes or no? So these are things, how about this? My opinion is mine. I'll fight with you to the death over an opinion. How about this idea of my reputation? Don't you think your reputation is yours? Do you walk around thinking to yourself, I have a reputation to uphold? Do you? Yes or no? And when is it suddenly that you suddenly are aware of the fact that now you're on the complete defensive with somebody? Why are you on the complete defensive with somebody? Because they've done something to impugn my authority. They've done something to impugn in one way or another my reputation that, by the way, I've invested 1,000 years in building. Do you see it with me, yes or no, please? So now let's open it up to you. I have a whole list of them, but I want to get everybody involved. And this is you who are out there in the webland. This is what we do. We're going to build a list and then examine it in the light of this idea of the Midas touch, of the misery touch. That's mine. John Feltz.
I believe rationality is mine.
I believe rationality is mine. How many of you are pretty sure you're a rational human being? And how long do you stay rational when somebody challenges your ideal? Not very long. Barbara.
Approval of others.
I believe that how others, the approval of others is mine. It's built into my excellent character, to the beauty with which I carry myself, my general position and appearance. Why wouldn't I get your approval when I spend so much time trying to get it, I might add? John, Roger.
I believe my security is mine.
Okay, that's good. He said, I believe that fear is mine. We're going to get to that whole list. Kate, have you got that going up there? Sorry, I kind of forgot. Jeannie says, my feelings are mine, yes. My ideas about everything and anyone. Those are mine. Yeah, right. My artistic talent. My talent is mine. How about my skill as an athlete? That's mine. Anybody else? Debbie.
So many. My happiness is mine as well as my misery is mine.
This is an important point. She said, happiness is mine. But somehow or other, because my happiness is mine, when my happiness gets challenged, then my misery becomes mine. So I can't really separate the idea of mine from its opposite that comes when what I believe is mine is challenged, because that's what we're trying to look at here. Chris?
My expectation that others behave in a certain way so that I won't be disturbed.
That was a long sentence. I think I covered it with, mine is the respect that I expect. That's mine, because I'm so worthy of you treating me and giving me and acting around me the way that you're supposed to. I believe that's mine. Ellen?
My superiority.
That's a big one. My sense of superiority, that's mine. Now, do you walk around thinking to yourself, what a superior person I am? Do you? Yes or no? And yet, all someone has to do is somehow or other a little innuendo that I'm not quite the marvelous person that I take myself to be. And what happens to my superiority? Please, what happens to instantaneous resentment, resistance, and if you see it, an instantaneous sense of inferiority? Because why would I try to have to go and prove to people that they didn't understand me, they didn't see me the way I am? If I'm justifying my superiority to myself, how superior am I? Or am I suffering over what I think is mine? This is what we're looking at. I'm suffering, aren't I, over what I think is mine? To the list, Claudia. Yeah, well, that's a big one. It covers it all, doesn't it? My life is mine. Really? And what's going to happen, as it must happen, as it's already happened a number of times, where suddenly something comes along and you see, you know what? My life isn't mine. My health isn't mine. Because in a heartbeat, my health can turn into something life-threatening, and I don't want to really think about it, but I'm going to have to face the day when I realize that my life was given to me. It's not mine, and it can be taken at the will of whatever it is that gave it to me. So my life isn't mine, but by God, I believe my life is mine. Yes or no? On the board, my good health, yes, Rob. My patience, yeah. You patient people, you. You're patient until what? Until you either explode outwardly or you have to go into some kind of rave inwardly to justify why it is that you tolerate people the way you do. Being tolerant of other human beings is not patience. Doug, my judgments are mine. Yes or no? Namita, spiritual ego or desire to do something for the spiritual growth of others. Yeah, Namita, I'll hit it right on the head for you. I had a marvelous conversation with a nice woman yesterday, fairly well known in the world. And she's torn up because her whole life has increasingly been dedicated to a certain end. And she's starting to find out that not only is what she's dedicated to not going to come about the way she imagines it, but that most everyone else that she knows, she's alienated in her wish to prove that what she loves is what everybody should love, and if they don't love what I love, then they don't have love and they're not worthwhile. Now I've got to go find loving human beings who feel like I do. Namita, to be very clear, love is not mine. You show me a person who thinks they're loving, and I'll show you someone who turns into a tyrant the moment that someone or something doesn't respond to them the way they imagine themselves as being. You know this is true, don't you? Kate W., my kids are mine. Good luck. But look, the fact is that your kids are your responsibility. I can't go through this list without adding something I don't have time to go into. You and I are given a life. Is the mountain that I live on that we bought, my wife and I, is that mountain mine? Well, but the law says it's mine. You come up I'll show you mine. But it's not mine anymore that the deer that I feed are mine or the trees that grow on that property. I'm a steward. I'm given an assignment, a responsibility. And when I somehow or other think that what I've been given is mine, instead of understanding what I've been given is an opportunity to be responsible to something through time so that I might learn something about myself, the minute that comes into view, I'm not interested. I want it to be mine. A couple more and then we're going to go on. Yes, Terry.
My so-called authority.
My authority. course, my authority is mine. Namita writes, attention is mine. Yes, Namita, attention is yours, but it isn't yet. That's the whole point of this talk. My attention goes to what I think is mine, and when what I think is mine is threatened, my attention goes to defending or protecting it, doesn't it? Yes?
My anger?
Yeah, I think anger is mine. I hear that all the time. I have righteous indignation. If I wasn't angry, how would things get done? And I beg of you, what's getting done? What's getting done? Because my anger is mine, but my anger is mine because it's vested in what I know is true about myself. And what I know is true is mine, so I know the truth, you don't, and we're going to have a war. Pretty good list. Let me go on now. No, we got to go. Ever so quickly, my plans are mine. Don't mess with them, yes or no? This is my space. Do not come into my space, even in elevators. No, honest to God. If you watch somebody standing too close to you, what's this person in my space? What's wrong with this person? My time. This is my time. You can't have my time unless I want to give you my time so that I can get something out of your time. You know, that's an exchange, is a different deal. How about pleasure is mine? Pleasure is mine. Ambition is mine. Religion is mine. My political ideals are mine. And when you have 6 billion human beings, each defining according to how they've imagined what is theirs, set against anyone who says mine is other than yours or yours is other than mine, what do you have? A war. So now, what do all these things that we have called mine, what do they all have in common? What do they all have? Every last one of these things has one thing in common. Can anybody tell me? They're images. Not mine. If it was mine, it wouldn't be a problem. Every last thing that I think is mine is connected to an image. And the image doesn't exist apart from the identification derived from what I've imagined is mine. So that I live in a world where I've imagined all of these things are mine, but I don't even know I've imagined it because the consciousness does that without trying. I'm actually born into a world where I'm inculcated. I'm actually conditioned by my father, my mother, my family, my friends, everything about it conditions me to believe that what I have finally desired and manifested and made mine is mine. When I didn't make anything mine, I made myself the victim of the identity derived from what I say I made mine anytime that what I call mine is threatened. Yes or no? Do you see it? All of them are images. An image can't be separated from the sense of self that's identified with it. And how, on one hand, please see it with me, we are so given. Are you not given to embrace things? I'll show you. This is why it's difficult. Let's take money. That's a big one. Here I am. And when I'm embracing my finances, my fortune, whatever it may be, I'm going over my accounts. Do you understand the idea? When I'm doing that, am I not given to embrace them when things are looking shiny? Things are pretty good. Yeah. You've done all right for yourself there, fella. And then a heartbeat later, quite literally, the next thing I know is that while I'm embracing all of those images because of the identity that it fostered in me, that I love, because it made me feel free, a split second later something happens, and then I want nothing to do with the fear that comes with any of those images being challenged. So I want the high side of the mind. I want none of the low side of the mind. And you can't have the high side of the mind without the low side of it, can you? You can't serve two masters. You will love one and despise the other. Do you see it? Why are we looking at this way? What's the point of it? We're looking at how this sense of self is endlessly derived from some unconscious imagination that constantly brings into itself based on something, usually a disturbance or something that it's been drawn to, so that it can, little by little, as a consequence, the more it can identify with something, the more it can feel like it's secure in what it's identified with. I keep thinking about it. Am I not deriving an identity from everything that I think about in my life? Do I not derive a sense of self from my money, my possessions, my powers, all the things, yes or no? And then, like that. Not to mention, and this is important, that all of those activities that seem to, again, I want to try to get you to see the subtler aspect of this. When you're driving, when you're getting ready to go someplace and you're in your car, do you think that the streets that you're going to be driving on are mine? Do you? Do you think to yourself, when you get in your car, do you think, I own this freeway, it's mine? Do you? Does that ever occur to you? How about driving down 6th Street? This is mine. You would never think that to yourself, and yet you tell me what happens when you get on the freeway and it's bumper to bumper. Or somebody cuts you off, or on 6th Street there's traffic till the cow comes home, and you're going, it wasn't like that 20 years ago. I don't know what's going on. What's wrong with this town? So now you're talking to yourself about what? Something has actually threatened your street. Is it your street? How about you're out with people and you've been fishing for a compliment? Strike home, Barbara? Yeah. Yeah, and do I think to myself, I'm fishing for a compliment? No, I'm just looking for what belongs to me already. I just want it confirmed again. And so I'm there, throw out my lure. And instead of somebody swallowing it and going, you're marvelous, they make some snide remark. Or they don't exactly see what it is that I want them to see that's so special about me. And I laid it out for them. I threw the pitch. It was a floater. Boom, nothing. Do I think to myself that prior to that moment, this image of me was mine, and that in order for it to feel good to me, I don't think that to myself, and yet there it is, yes or no. So when that happens, am I the one who possesses that image? Am I the one who owns that? Is it mine, or am I its, as long as I don't recognize that? So where does that leave us? If you've been following me, and I know you do because you're still here, because we talked about how there can't be this certainty that we're looking for. What is certainty other than the strength of my identification with something? Isn't that what certainty is? So here I am, and suddenly I'm uncertain, and I listen to this and I go, certainty and uncertain, they don't exist without each other. Well, what else is there? And what did we say there was? Where did we say real security was resting? Does anybody remember? In the end of the illusion of a separate self. That's where we said real security rests. And only security I know. What about you? That's what the whole world is. My security is vested in what I have invested myself in, whatever that may be, to cultivate whatever it is extraordinary so that I can be seen that way and feel secure in my life. That's the whole of my life. And then I start to hear it. Wait a minute. So whatever it is that I think is mine, I don't own, but it owns me. What am I supposed to do? That's all I know. With God as my witness, that's all I know. Is that I have a problem, I have a disturbance, I have a wish, I have a desire, however it takes place. And the minute that happens, there is something that I want to make mine. That's all I know. I grew up a poor kid. I'm not going to be like that when I get old. I'm going to make mine wealth. I grew up being disrespected. I'm going to make the insistence that people respect me mine. And if they don't, I'll show them what for. So we grow up without even knowing it, that this mind, this conditioned mind, which isn't even our consciousness, it's our consciousness, but not the content of it, the way we're identified. The next thing I know, I'm all the time fighting to protect what I think is mine. What is fear other than trying to protect something I've imagined is mine? Isn't it? You say, wait a minute, I have a bank account. You're saying I shouldn't be afraid when something happens? I'm not telling you to be or do anything. I'm pointing out to you that if you believe that who you are and your life hangs on the idea of what you think is yours, you don't have a life, period. Because everything and anything that's constantly changing in the vast, try to put this together. What's the uncertainty of life other than a moment where what I thought was mine suddenly seems not to be? Isn't that what uncertainty is? And what do I do with uncertainty? What happens in the moment of uncertainty? See it? Tell me, anybody? I come up with the next thing to make mine. I'm going to cut bait here, get rid of that, and I'm going to alter everything. I'm going to refurbish. I'm going to get over here. I got a new thing that's going to be mine. Isn't that what happens? And so I keep trying to make things mine. And it hasn't dawned on me, the fox blames the trap. That this consciousness believes somehow or other that whatever it imagines it possesses, it actually has that as the foundation, the ground of itself. And yet I can see with my own eyes, it's evidential from experience. The ground that I stand on, that I say is mine, my reputation, my authority, my intelligence, my love, the ground that I stand on is forever doing what? Giving away. And how many times? See, it's a simple question. I bring it up all the time. How many times am I going to sit in my chair, drive in my car, be in a phone conversation, get an email? How many times am I going to go and have a moment where suddenly I feel like something is trying to take something from me, something about to lose something, and I always say to them, and you don't see it, but there's a great big feeling of hands off. No, no, yes or no. Saying no to the world, no to this, no to that, hands off. Can I say hands off unless I've got my hands on something and I feel like it's trying to take it out of my hands? What good is a life of any form that can be taken out of your hands? I don't care what it is. Because life can't take life from itself. Love can't take love from itself. So I spend my days without understanding it, meeting these moments over and over and over and over again. And each time, having failed prior to that moment to understand what it was that was going on, I simply go through the same iteration until, God willing, one day, and now let's bring up the special writing, please. The following takes place. This is a special writing. If you're home, you can download it. It's Eric and Kate are putting up the link. It's called The Last Thing. The last thing that comes to mind, given there's so many things still to find, is a question whose answer takes a lifetime to ponder, let alone refine. What if there's a life that can't be defined? A greatness beyond any name or claim, let alone imagined as mine. I tell you, the only pain a human being has is that they imagine something as their own. And that you and I cannot, it is, and you'll, God willing, you'll understand one day. I suffer when something that I think is mine suddenly looks like it might not be mine. I think your respect for me is mine. I already earned it. Look what I've done. Look at everything I gave you. And then, all of a sudden, no respect. And the minute that I don't get what I think is mine, what becomes of me? What am I then? Am I in control of my life, or am I possessed by a power that under all circumstances I have to get back to where that's mine again? So I'll punish you. I'll coerce you. I'll motivate you. I'll manipulate you. I'll do anything I can to get you to put back in place what I think is mine. Some news, some financial event, something about my health, could be anything. In a heartbeat, stripped away what I think is mine. And then from this cool, calm, collected man or woman, I'm in a scramble. I'm in chaos. But the chaos is never aware of itself. You know why the chaos born of seeing that what I thought was mine, you know why it has no awareness of itself? Because it's been thrown into a sea of foamy slumber, a sudden constant, I've got to get this back, I've got to restore this so that it's mine again. And it doesn't care what it does to get it to be mine again, because then it will take the anger or the fear or the anxiety it feels and become so identified with that then that's mine. And then that negative state that's mine becomes the next thing that will become mine, because I don't want to be negative. So the next thing that nature does is it imagines what I have to do to release myself from that pain. And then I identify with that desire, and that becomes mine. Do you see it with me? All the time making deals. All the time making deals. Here's the main point, listen. By nature, any of these images, any of these ideas that I think are mine, and you understand now that what those names we have, they're just images, right? That have a very distinct identity connected to them, yes or no? Every last image, every identity derived from it is old. Every last one, it's old. Do you understand what that means? I can't have an image that comes into my mind that then I identify and desire that didn't already belong to this consciousness, that wasn't already a part of the content of myself, so that forever I'm digging through the rubble, the trash bin, looking for the next thing to make mine. But when it's shiny and it looks new, I don't think to myself, this is old and trash. I think, here's the power and the triumph of my next stage of life. And I pull it out, and I pull out something old, and I think it's new because I have a sensation born out of being renewed by my relationship with it. And I'm not renewed as a human being. The sensation and the stimulation of identification is kindled once again, and I buy it lock, stock, and barrel. What we are interested in, if you're following me, is not this idea as we are presently captured all the time. This idea of this of revisiting what is old and shining it up. We've been talking about the fact that that's not the same at all as being made new from the inside out. All of that's outside in, isn't it? Every image, every idea, everything that I cling to, all of that began with something, some idea, some ideal, something that was outside of me, meaning that it was part of this consciousness that I believed was my consciousness. Speaking of what's not mine. There's nothing in any image, let alone the identification with it and the sense of that's mine. Not one of those things will ever know what it means to be flooded with new energy. To be changed from the inside out. That nature will never know that. It can't. Because everything it does is predicated on trying to change itself from the outside in. It'll never know what it's like to be in relationship with real life. So I have to bring this talk to an end. Let me get to the last point. As simple as I can say it, somehow or other, I have to work to not just see, but to feel as consciously as possible the sudden onset of that's mine syndrome. I can't get angry at you without you having threatened me, what I think is mine. I can't get negative towards any part of the world without believing that somehow or other it's stepping on what's mine. It's stepping on my toes. And this is why the truth is so difficult, in one respect, for the longest time to understand. There is nothing more alien to your spirit than the thought, that's mine. Nothing. And we are so far fallen that all we know is that thought and that feeling. That's mine. I'm telling you that the idea of that's mine is alien to what is good and true. What is good and true is not mine, it is ours. What is righteous, what is abiding and everlasting belongs to a consciousness that isn't divided up into you and me. But this is good and this is bad. That's not what we're here for. And the only way a man or a woman can even begin to understand what this is like is when they start to say this, you know what? I can feel it. I can feel this reaction. And my reaction is always to struggle with something that seems to be taking from me what's mine. That's my reaction. And I've been in that dark tunnel of tug-of-war for 1,000 years. Believing that every time I feel that tug, every time I feel something coming, it's like that's mine. No, you can't take it. My life depends upon it. Every time that happens, all I know to do is to fight. But I'm telling you that within you there lives another order of consciousness that is capable of feeling in that moment that when this that's mine comes over me. You can feel it. You'll feel the contraction. You know how we talk about that? You'll feel the resistance. What is resistance to any given moment of life other than the feeling that I've got to get rid of this because it's threatening what I think is mine? Isn't that ultimately the resistance? Here's an addict. He's talking to his friend and he's been clean for 6 months. His friend says, "This is great. So happy for you. I'm proud of you. What is the main thing you've learned?" Listen to this, it's staggering. The addict turns to him and he says, "You know what? I would have never believed it." He said, "But it was so painful to stop killing myself. I almost couldn't stop doing it. It was so painful to stop killing myself, I almost couldn't do it." Isn't that what an addict does? Don't they kill themselves? And when a man or a woman who believes everything is mine, it's my right, my place, my time, mine, when that man or woman starts to see that they're addicted to the sense of self generated through an unconscious mind, and they realize, I have to withdraw from this. I don't have any time to waste. Because every moment that comes along, somehow or other, I feel like that's mine. I've got to fix it, control it, change it. And that man, just like he said, it was so painful to stop killing myself, and I still suffer from wanting to destroy myself, but I won't do it. I still suffer from wanting to destroy myself. I'm describing to you a very specific point in your spiritual work, where you will see there is something that has been trying to kill you, and you're starting to get onto it, meaning take your life. And that it hurts so much to not die, to let it kill you. It hurts to not let it take your life. Can you imagine the schism in this consciousness? And then to go further and say, at that point, it's unbelievable. What is temptation? Here I am, I'm tempted to fix you or to do this or go there or get that or stop that. I'm tempted to do that. Why am I tempted to do that? Because something that was mine has been threatened and I've got to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'm tempted to do that. And imagine, I'm tempted to do what? I'm tempted to go back into the trap believing that I've escaped it. Can you follow that? And imagine a consciousness that fears not going back into the trap. That's what I'm describing to you. Use every last moment you can. Bring up the last key lesson, and I'll end on that note. Sorry, I went a little bit longer, 5 minutes longer than usual. As false I dies as new I arises. As false I dies, new I arises. What does that mean? How many of you know the legend of the phoenix? From out of the ashes comes this new life. From out of the ashes of the mistaken identity that believes everything is mine comes a relationship with something that already is in place and that cannot wait to give you a new identity that has no dependency attachment whatsoever. As false I dies, isn't that false I, this is mine? Yes or no? New I arises. And they happen at the same time. It's not like this sequence thing where this happens and then that happens. As you start to see where it is that you continually live from this, that's mine, and then start to see how painful it is to live like that, you'll begin to not want to have that life anymore. You can't do anything except pay attention to the fact of it, and as you pay attention to the fact of it, and you begin to withdraw from it, new I arises at the same time. Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue.